Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. I'm sitting here on the balcony of my 5-star hotel, quarantined on the 8th day of quarantine. Yes, I just about couldn't get that out. Anyway, I really don't have a lot of places to videotape, so my backgrounds are getting boring. I'm starting to look a little rough around the edges, but I'm just gonna act like a wild man until they let me out of quarantine. So no shaving. I have a shower every once in a while, but the idea. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about, you don't really know China. If as a Westerner, as a keyboard warrior sitting in your mother's basement, listening to mainstream media in the United States or Canada or England or Australia, New Zealand, wherever you are, and getting all of these bad news reports about China. When the COVID-19 hit, there was a thing in the news. Oh, is this the time that China's going to attack Taiwan? Where did they get this garbage from? If this is your understanding of China, just listening to what they put on the news in the Western media, or what they write in the Western papers, what they put in Western social media, you're getting a one-sided, biased view of what China really is, or actually who China really is, because it's a living, breathing place as far as I'm concerned. If you came to China on a tour, a guided tour, and hit the Great Wall of China, you hit the Gugong, or the Forbidden City, the Emperor's Tombs, or you went to Hong Kong, or you went to Gweilo and traveled on a boat down the Li River and watched the cormorants fishing off the little fishing boats, and then you ate some Chinese food and some rice and veggies and some whatever, and now you really know China because you've been there for 2 or 3 weeks. You don't know what China is. You don't know who China is. The people that actually know what China is or who China is are the people that have lived here for a long time, or better yet, the Chinese people that have grown up here in China. See, if you're a tourist and you come to China, you go to a restaurant, you eat your food, you go back to your hotel room, you go out sightseeing, you see the superficial China that that a tourist would see. It's not your fault that you don't know what China is or who China is. It's because you haven't spent enough time here. You haven't really adapted to China. You haven't integrated into the Chinese mindset or psyche or whatever you want to call it. If you live in China here for a year or two, and you get out and about, if you jump on an e-bike and you drive the streets, if you go out for breakfast at a soup restaurant, a dim sum place, a baozi place, dim sum on the street, you know the people, you talk to the people, you understand the people, you know, that's learning China. After you're done your breakfast, you head to the wet market. Yes, the notorious wet market, and go buy your vegetables, your fruits, your rice, your meats, your barbecued duck heads, your barbecued pig nose. Yes, all of those lovely things. Eating koro, the things that the Chinese have been eating for literally centuries. Yes, you go to the wet market and you buy that. You take it home and you cook it up. And you're starting to learn what China is or who China is. If you come over as an expat and you live here for 2 or 3 years, and you don't eat Chinese food, you don't go to the wet markets, you don't go out and have your morning soups, dim sums, whatever, and you head for McDonald's for I don't know what they call it, a McGriddle or a egg McMuffin or sausage McMuffin, or you know what I mean, and you don't eat the Chinese food, well, then you really don't know China, because if you're not eating the food, China is food, and food is China, because that's part of the culture here. If you're not eating the Chinese food, how can you integrate? How can you understand China if you're not eating the food that the Chinese people eat? And it's so freaking good, guys. But it's not just one thing. It's not just going to the flea markets, going to the wet markets. It's not just going out for breakfast. It's not riding an e-bike. It's not conversing with people. It's not going out to Chinese bar instead of a Western bar at night. It's traveling to the farms and seeing the rice paddies and sweeping off graves in April with the rest of the family, getting together in the village for a big feast after that's all done. It's not just that. It's part of an attitude that if you love China, if you want to integrate into the Chinese society, you have to experience all of these things and probably more. I don't think a Westerner, I've been here 17 years and I learn new things about China every day. Things I can do and things I can't do. Things that interest me, things that bore me, whether I enjoy it or not, I sort of see that there's those things out there that make up China and what China is and who China is. If you don't understand the political scene in China, if you don't understand how the people think in China, if you don't understand their struggles, their history, what they've been through, what they're going through, and what their aspirations are for the future, then you really don't know China. The Chinese people are a lot like Western people. They've had a rough background, and you look back 100 years in places like Canada where people were clearing land with like ox, a mule, a horse, their bare hands to start farming on the land. Yes, tough times. Not so long ago in China, and to this day, farmers in fields live a very poor and sort of hard life. You get the people that live in the cities that are working at menial jobs. They have a very poor and hard life. You get the middle class people that are educated, living a better life. You get the rich people living an excellent life. You see, it's the same as in the West, where you've got poor people, you've got middle class people, and you got high class people. You got educated people, you got uneducated people. It's part of any country. So if you don't understand that about China and their struggles in the past, their struggles today, and their struggles for the future, you really don't know China. The Chinese love their country. They're very patriotic. They love their family. They're very family oriented. I look at Tongo. If you want to know the Chinese person that has the values of the old China in the countryside, you only have to look as far as our cousin Tongo. Tong being his last name, Go being his first name. Okay, he's the epitome of old China. He's learned the old Chinese ways. He's actually younger than me. I think he's 55, but through his life, he's had a hard life. He's lived on the farm all of his life. His job is to buy ducks off of farmers. He takes them, he slaughters them, he plucks them, he cleans them, and he barbecues them. And he sells them in the town square. Okay, well, that's a job. Okay, in Bobai, China. And you hear me talking about Bobai a lot, and because it's where our family comes from. So, just from selling ducks in the town square in Bobai, he has built a 3-story house for his boys. He's got 3 boys. One kid for each floor type thing, and they're all married now, so they've got them, their wives, and their kids, and a brand new house to live in. All right, what about Tongo and his wife? Well, they live in the old house. The old house that's actually connected to the pig barn. Stinks, it's dirty, it's old. It was built back in the 1970s. Okay, well, why wouldn't he build 4 stories high and he could have a level 2? Because it's not about him, it's about his children. He wants his children to have a better life than he does. So he's willing to sacrifice every penny that he has. He's willing to sacrifice a better life for himself and his wife. He's willing to sacrifice the comforts of living in a nicer place for his children. He's willing to sacrifice working every day, all day long, for his children. And I see that as something that the Western people don't understand. Well, they do sort of, but not to this degree. And if you don't see this up front and personal like I have, then you really don't know China. You don't know the Chinese people, and chances are you'll never know the Chinese people. You can't understand the Chinese people by sitting in Shanghai or Beijing or Guangzhou, Chengdu, Chongqing. You can't understand the Chinese people until, sure, you got to look at the city, you got to look at the country, you got to look at everything. But to get a really grassroots understanding of who the Chinese people are, you have to go to rural China and look at people like this and actually live with them and understand them over a number of years to see what really makes them tick. Until you do that, you don't know China. You don't know what China is or who China is. You see, I've been learning a lot about the Chinese. You see, and I thought I knew a lot about China. Well, and I do. I know about the customs. I know about the food. I know about the people. I know about the understanding and that they don't have the same sense of humor as a Canadian. I've come across that on a number of occasions, and sometimes it's well, I don't want to go down that road. But after 17 years of knowing China, then this CV thing hit, and I saw a different side of China. I saw, because people say, oh, Chinese are selfish. Chinese people don't care about their neighbor. Chinese people don't care about this, that, the other thing. I saw a different side of China. Once this CV thing, when the rubber hits the frickin' road here in China, the Chinese people put the pedal to the metal, and I'm telling you, they take care of business. It wasn't just one, it wasn't 10, it wasn't 100, it was 1.5 billion people got in the driver's seat and made sure that everything was done perfectly over the last 3 months. And I thought that, yeah, they dropped the ball. It's sort of nonchalant. Yeah, it'll get done when it gets. No. So when you see something like that in China, in a place that I've been at 17 years now, and I thought I saw just about everything, every mannerism that there could be in China from the Chinese people, and then I see something like this, astounded me for sure. I didn't think that they would be able to handle it the way that they did, with such precision. So as I say, I've been around China for a number of years, and I'm still learning from the Chinese people on how to do things, how to get things done, what they think, how they think, and boy, that patriotic head reared itself during the CV crisis, I tell you. And everybody, I'm telling you, everybody in the country was working as hard as they possibly could, doing as much as they possibly could to make sure that their country and their fellow countrymen was safe. And I have no doubt that the Western countries, or even countries around the world, not just the West, but most of the countries around the world, will never know China, what China is or who China is, because they never take the time to actually see China. They listen to this Western fake media, the mainstream media that's politically motivated, and they'll never actually learn what China is. And it's too bad, because China is a really neat, amazing country, and the people are the same. They are amazing people. From the idea that, well, it's sort of like Christmas here, but it's grave sweeping day, and it's family oriented, is because not too many Chinese people are religious, mostly atheists. From what I've seen, there could be pockets of Christians and stuff out there. I know that in Xinjiang province, the Uyghurs are basically Muslims, but it's not a big thing here in China. So when grave sweeping time comes along and the family gets together all over the rural areas of China to go and climb mountains, sweep off their ancestors' graves, their passed away loved ones' graves and stuff like that, you see that everybody is sort of dedicated to that that way of life, I guess, is what it is. And it takes time, it takes effort, it takes people away from their jobs, it costs money to get there, it takes time, it's hard running up and down these hills in April when it's 28-30 degrees outside. Sometimes it's raining like 10 bear out there, and they do it anyway. Why? because it shows respect for their ancestors. It shows that they remember them. It's the right thing to do. And as far as I've seen, most Chinese people, when it comes to family, friends, they always do the right thing. And they do this to show respect for their ancestors, and it shows the character of the Chinese people to actually do something like this. And we go up there and we blow off firecrackers and bring dead animals, cooked, mind you. Well, no, the pigs aren't cooked, but and carry a whole pig up a mountain to, sort of like a sacrifice or a gesture to the dead type thing. We burn paper shoes, paper cars, paper clothes, paper money, all of these different things. It's symbolic. It is. It's symbolic, but it shows respect for their ancestors. And if you don't see this, if you don't experience this, you don't know what China is. You don't know who China is. And one of the things that I've seen over and over and over again, family relatives going to visit older relatives just because they want to make sure that older relative has contact with family. Wei Feng's dad, he's a little hard to deal with, but Wu Fa, comes over, his nephew comes over on a regular basis, his wife and children come over on a regular basis to visit the old boy, especially when we're not around. But they do that to make the older people happier, so they've got something to look forward to. It's one of those things that they visit the old people here in China to maybe talk to them about what happened 80 years ago or 60 years ago, drawing knowledge out of the older people. It's one of those things that you really don't see in the West that much, but until you see it here and you see it on a regular basis, you don't know what China is, you don't know who China is, because that is China. That's the way that the Chinese people think. They have respect for their elders. And really, they have respect for their elders here in China, which is one of the things that we could learn a lot from in the West. From giving red bags to children at Chinese New Year's. What's this all about? Well, it's tradition. It's sort of like Christmas again, where your friends and your family have children. Well, you put a little bit of money in each red bag, and you keep red bags with you at New Year's. So after New Year's, and you go and visit a friend, and they've got a couple of kids, you give the kids red bags. It's tradition. So then they get a whole bunch of money together, and then they got money to go out and buy stuff and buy presents for themselves or toys or whatever. It's actually not a bad idea. It's even better than Christmas, just for the fact that the kids get to pick what they want, because now they got the bucks, you know what I mean? So the red bag thing, somebody does a favor for you, you give them a red bag. It's one of those things that if you don't see that, if you don't understand that, then again, you don't know what China is, you don't know who China is. Then there's the dancing aunties, the ladies and stuff, dancing in the parking lots at the banks, dancing at the parking lot at the stores, dancing on the street, dancing in the parks, dancing. You see people doing kung fu, karate, doing their katas in the park, people with swords, people singing, people exercising, people running, people playing volleyball, people playing soccer, people, you know what I mean? And it's everywhere in China. If you saw the video that I did, Chinese parks are crazy. Well, they are. But this goes on 7 days a week, all year long, and morning, noon, and night. It's one of those things. So the people of China are out there, they're doing things, they're trying to stay healthy, they're really social butterflies from what I've seen. I've heard that from a lot of Westerns, Chinese people are not easily approachable. Well, that's bullshit. Like, I approach Chinese people and they approach me on a regular basis, and it's I think that maybe the Western people, because they don't speak a lot of Chinese, they feel that they can't converse with somebody. It's you know, it can be as simple as you know, playing games with these people, and they understand, you understand, but the idea that the rest of the world doesn't do this as much as the Chinese shows that the Chinese are more active. They're more social. It is China, and if you don't understand this, and you don't participate in the park sort of scene, then again, you don't know what China is, you don't know who China is. But one thing I'd like to make perfectly clear is the Chinese people are not that different than anybody else. They have aspirations of being rich. They want a bigger house, they want a nice car, they want money in the bank, they want to wear nice clothes. Their children go to ballet classes and music classes, and they go on family vacations, and you know, they do everything that you and I do. They like to watch TV. They like to play video games. They like when the family gets together and people come over and they have parties where there's beer drinking and eating pizza. Oh, you bet. So, you know, the idea that there's that part of the culture too, and it's mostly in the younger community for sure when you get into that, because the older ones are sort of lost in the Cultural Revolution type days, and they really haven't come out of that. Anybody, I'd say 50, 55 years and older are lost in that sort of area of their understanding. Anybody younger than that, they want to be more like the Western world. They think the Western world is a great place. And then I got into immigration and I started taking Chinese people to Canada. A lot of these people figured out that the grass is not greener on the other side, and they ended up back in China. Why? Because they miss China. They found out that China has a really good character, that the people there are kind, courteous, more innocent. There wasn't as much violent crime. There's basically no racism, because there's only one race basically in China, and that's Chinese. Sure, you've got the Uyghurs up north, you've got the Gweilo, like myself, running around in different areas, but basically everybody in China is basically Chinese, so racism really isn't a thing in China. And until you see this firsthand and understand it, I guess you really don't know China. So the moral of the story is, if you don't spend time in China, if you don't see it for yourself, through your own eyes, if you don't spend enough time, if you don't, when you're here, if you don't integrate with the people, if you don't see the rural areas, not just the city areas, or the city areas, not just the rural areas, if you don't sort of hang out in the Chinese world and eat the Chinese food and see the Chinese culture and sort of immerse yourself in it, then you're really never going to know what China is or who China is. You're not going to understand the 28,000 high-speed trains in the country. You're not going to see the subways, the high-rises, the brand new roads. You're not going to see where China used to be and where it is now. You're not going to understand that, because if you're not here for a long time, you haven't seen it grow. You just see what's here and now. And I feel that's a shame, because a lot of people would learn a lot from the Chinese experience if they just come over to China, spend some time, or maybe read stuff that isn't mainstream media, and get a better rounded view of what China actually is. Yeah, so that's day 8. That's what Gweilo was doing on day 8 of his quarantine here in Nanning, China. If you like this video, as always, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to resubscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell. Don't forget to make a comment. And never forget to put a couple bucks on the Children's Patreon account. It's for a good cause. All they need is a little helping hand, and I think we can give it to them. Help me, help the children. Thanks for watching. Bye now.